This is 7 o'clock. We're called this conservation meeting to order. Mansfield Conservation Commission, our regular meeting of January 17th, 2024. Our roll call, I'm Michael Soares, chair. I can go around. Chad Rittenhouse, secretary. Erin King, vice chair. Meg Harper, your seated member, correct? And Will We Met also.
Present.
Well, you're no longer an alternate, right? You're a member.
Correct.
So our alternates are Miranda and Chandi?
No,
James.
James.
Right.
James.
Okay, so absent members are John Silender, Miranda Davis, and our alternates, James Knight and Chandi with Rana. Okay. Our last meeting's minutes, anybody have comments or a motion so we can discuss anything, or just a motion to approve as written?
I'll move to approve the January 17th, 2024 minutes as
I'll
presented.
second.
Thanks, Will. And let me go backwards. I said this is our regular meeting of January 17th because I was looking at the minutes and not the agenda. This is, for the recording, let me correct, this is our regular meeting of February.
This is our special meeting.
Technically special
This
meeting.
is our special meeting of February 28th, because we had to move our regular meeting up to the 21st. So, okay. So now we have a motion. Chad has made a motion to approve Chad's minutes,
And Will seconded.
and we'll second. Any comments or changes or anything like that? Look good to me. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any? Was that a hand for?
Yeah,
Bishop?
I approve. I vote, say yes, whatever.
Voted unanimously.
With one abstaining, King's abstaining.
Great.
401 for the record.
Great.
Okay, no public comment. On to old business, item 4A, discussion of easement monitoring and with Joshua's Trust coordination and the 2/11/24 report. Michael, which one do you, the Joshua's Trust, is that something?
I can just tell you about that. So
Yeah.
I reached out to Joshua's Trust. Joshua's Trust has a very robust volunteer network, and they have a lot of easements and pieces of property that they routinely monitor. And I reached out to them and basically said, help. How do you do this? What's your procedure? What's your volunteer network look like? And what could be some potentials of you or some of your volunteers or staff doing this for us? And they had a couple of suggestions and a couple different ways that we could go in order to make this work perhaps a little more timely. The first thing they recommended was we should do remote monitoring. So they say they have a program that they call Lens, which is you can gain access to a lot of remote imagery that way. The town pays for something called Nearmap, which is we get a semi-yearly aerial imagery. So we have spring and summer or autumn imagery of the whole town that's flown. We can use that to compare and see if there are signs of disturbance just as remote monitoring for every property every year. That's not hard. We divvy up the rough locations, look, see if there's anything that's problematic. Everybody takes some. And then if there is something that becomes a location of special interest that we can go down and check. Now, it doesn't tell us everything about the location. We definitely won't be able to see if the placards are up there or if there's, too much trash, but it will give us an indication if there's been some infringement on the boundaries from neighbors who may just not know. So there was that.
Would that be once a year?
We could do that as often as we want, but I figure since we get updated aerial imagery for the winter when we can really see things in the summer, we get that every 6 months. We could do it every 6 months to every once a year. It allows us to have more of a dedicated presence, even remotely.
Will is the question.
Is that imagery orthorectified?
Can you put that in lay terms, Will?
I mean, is it just a photo from a plane, or is it actually a GIS layer that's going to be alignable with all the other data sets from the town?
We get GIS layers.
Okay.
Yeah, we have it on GIS layers. It is right now, the latest ortho maps are only available to staff, but I can just open up the staff layer, get you all accounts with those permissions, and then you'll have the latest maps. That's what I used to do enforcement. When people say, I didn't cut down those trees, and then I lay the maps out and say, yeah, you cut down those trees. So there's that. The
Yeah.
second thing that they recommended was following up with a program that Tolland does. Tolland's Conservation Commission has a robust volunteer network that they call the Conservation Corps, which was essentially a whole bunch of folks who, back in the day, they had one or two really active people who got a whole bunch of volunteers and kind of got the boulder rolling on getting people to do weekly or semi-weekly hikes of this week, we from the Conservation Corps are going to do this. They mobilize volunteers, and then the volunteers write a quick report and submit it to the Conservation Commission, and the Conservation Commission receives it at their meeting, they review it, and that's it. The Conservation Commission basically acts as the governing body and gets these volunteers to do this. Now, volunteer coordination is hard. It's something the town has struggled with for a long time. But you know, they said the people who originally started that program have been gone for years now, but it's still moving forward because it became an established part of the program. If people have time and energy, which is always the thing, to begin attempting to do volunteer coordination and reach out to some of the active groups in town, maybe work with the Parks and Natural Resources Committee to tap some of the wider networks, Yukon Eco Club or various other people who like to get out in nature, we could try to start building something like that. The third suggestion was, yes, we can probably divvy up some properties for Joshua's Trust to look at. We'll have to create some sort of a contract where they would be deemed our agent to do certain things in our stead. And they would send their volunteers out. You know, we have some money in the budget for these kinds of things. We'd have to draft up an agreement. That could take some of the burden off of us. I have not yet had the time to get a full modern list of all of our easements. I know that it's not that hard for me to get. It's just in a couple different pieces and I have to put them together. I'm hoping that by the end of March, by the time we get together again, I will have that. I want to sit down with Jennifer and work on that. From there, we can see, you know, what our real rate of progress is, and then see if it's feasible to ask the trust to help us. But those are the things that they recommended of how we can expand what we're doing, ways we may want to approach this. And I just wanted to report that conversation and say, what do you all think?
Who'd you talk to? Michael or Alex?
No, I actually spoke to Brian Avery. So
I'm on the
Brian,
board, so
Okay.
I'm very familiar with the trust.
Yep.
And I don't think we should count, like, I mean, we could probably divvy up some properties with them, but in the notes, it says something about interns, like they'd be willing to share interns, and I think Brian's putting a lot on these interns, and I don't see them being able to help us. The Conservation Corps thing sounds pretty cool. I personally really like doing the conservation easement monitoring, so
it definitely doesn't take it away from you because
Yeah.
it's stopping you if you try to
Right.
get volunteers and train them to see these things.
yeah, and I
that-
think. Like my suggestion would be we could do like the aerial imagery, like do that on an annual basis and then try to get like on the ground like every 5 years or something. Or 3 years or whatever we deem like appropriate. I think we could do like a combo. Or if we wanted to have the Conservation Corps help us with the on the ground stuff. Those are my thoughts.
The like where Joshua's Trust has a parcel they're monitoring next to a town parcel. That's where that.
Yeah, like
partic-
Wetton
Woods.
Woods is one is an
Yeah.
example. Yeah, then
Right.
it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
right.
actually not our easement. Did you know that? That's Yukon's easement. I just had to ask them for permission to cut down some trees over there.
I do
Um,
know that actually, because you guys, well, the the trust has been talking with NRCS to.
Yep.
Yeah, so.
I am also involved in that. I had to cancel a meeting today because of all the wind that would potentially
Ah.
bring down the big ash trees that we
Right.
have to cut out because they're a hazard in windstorms like today.
In Wetton Woods?
Yeah, so we are,
Oh, inside on the trails?
well, we're hoping, the tree warden, slight diversion. I'm also sorry to hijack your comments here, but the tree warden is concerned that, with the amount of standing ash that is dead or dying, that the trails are not necessarily as safe to walk as you would like. And we have a 2019 management plan for Wetton Woods that we developed in collaboration with Joshua's Trust. We'd like to see it through. As with most things that we got done in 2019, COVID hit us like a truck and it just didn't happen. So now we're trying to move forward on that. I was supposed to meet with Whole Forest Products out there to see about the conditions of the various stands of trees denoted, whether the recommendations still make sense. And they were going to give us quotes for timber salvage. Which we want to follow up with at least 2 years of invasive species monitor for the areas we've thinned, and invest some money in, if we do have invasive, colonization removal, in order to kind of create that mixed age forest structure that's so important and all of you know about, because now I'm talking about things that you all know about. Yeah, that's a project Wetton Woods that's going on.
Yes, well, back to our monitoring.
Yes.
That is helpful because I walk there all the time, so that's just cool to know that that's coming up, but, I like the monitoring. I like getting out, as Aaron said. I think it's impossible, given our rate of work, to like
Yeah.
accomplish much annually, but I use Nearmap a lot for work. It is incredibly recent and high resolution. There's still something to be said for being on the ground and kind of seeing it. So yeah, maybe it's a bit of both, like a remote, remote monitoring with follow-up if we see things out there, or to see things in the imagery that are concerning. I love the idea of like a volunteer group, but that really takes a point person to like really
I've done
run
a
with
lot of
that
work with
idea.
volunteers, and so whenever I hear them, I'm like, ah.
Yeah, I mean, that's like, that's somebody's job, not
It's a lot of.
doing the monitoring, it's like just coordinating volunteers. And then if Joshua's is interested, or if there's some way to create a reciprocity or a partnership where they monitor, adjacent town parcels that are adjacent to theirs. I know they have like a stewardship fund, and so, but if they're volunteers and they're able to do the 20 acres that are next to the JT property, I don't know if that that's a way to kind of divide and conquer this a little better. What are my thoughts?
My broader forest management goals are really involving collaboration with Joshua's Trust, wherever we have our big parcels next to each other, is to work on some broader landscape level forest management. And if we tie that into this as kind of a broader project, that may work. So I can approach them about that specifically.
Yeah, sort of a establishment of baseline conditions a little bit. Yeah.
I would just add that, I think that the imagery is a good idea, but the most important right now is that we get to all of them and establish the boundary better. And there is a GIS problem we've noted for a while, is that the maps that we actually bring out into the field that are filed with the town are often a little bit different than what the GIS is. So someone's gonna have to go in. If you're just gonna do this remote, you got to make sure that your GIS is in really good order, that it matches what the maps are saying. We do find often there's disagreement between what the GIS says with what those maps show.
For that, it's not blame, but I'll blame the assessor's maps, right? Because the GIS, all those parcel lines, that's the assessor's maps, which we overimposed.
Yeah, I mean, the challenge with that, Will, is unless the property's been surveyed, we just don't, we get assessor's lines and not surveyed property boundaries. So the GIS lines are from the tax assessor, which are generally close, but they're really representative and not accurate lines.
Yeah, but when we've been going out with actual hand-drawn maps.
Yeah.
And we've trusted those. It is a GIS exercise to take those for each and correct it based off of those, is what I was saying.
Yeah, that is, I could send the descriptions, the survey descriptions and the survey maps and try to adjust those and work with CAI, who's our GIS provider. Or I could work with, I really need to brush up on my GIS before I make any commitments of being able to do that myself. You know, to improve those lines. But that's a medium to long term thing, just in terms of how many hours I offer.
I was just saying that how can you ever use the GIS of the imagery without them being accurate? You can't. So if the imagery is the plan, then that's got to be a midterm goal to achieve that plan.
It's only the real egregious stuff that it'll catch.
Yeah, I think it doesn't catch kind of.
But most likely the really egregious stuff is gonna be on the border of, right on the easement, probably, like where they're dumping stuff. So then-
Right, and sometimes those lines are like 2 feet off that we found in the field, and sometimes the line in GIS was like 15 or 20 feet off, right? We've had some places where it was way off a stone wall and we could tell the difference, so maybe the remote review is really just kind of a first pass to see
Yeah,
something
see if there's big
egregious.
Problems.
The other problem is if there's conifers, you just don't even, you can't see the ground and see the kind of, so maybe it's just something to try out a little bit and see how effective we think it is. And then maybe if we feel like it's working, we keep going through it. If we coming into a lot of stumbling blocks, I'm sure we could clear some properties and kind of get them off our plate.
Or at least use it to prioritize.
Yeah.
If
You know,
they're-
some of the older easements are like on a wetland. So it's sort of like, it's in some situations less likely that they're impacting that because it's a wet area. I don't know, I've seen it go both ways. Sometimes the easements are already on top of something that people don't tend to go into anyway. But as a process, do we want to, what are your thoughts about trying to do some of the remote stuff?
We
I
should
guess.
try it at least. I
Yeah.
mean, have a couple test cases.
What we could do for the next meeting is I can get that list of properties, we can pull up near map and the GIS layers, and then we can just try a couple and see if we're getting anything while we're in a meeting, see if it's providing anything useful, and then if it isn't, we'll know.
Mhm.
Sounds
And
good.
we can go from there.
Yeah.
Stare at maps as a team.
Woohoo, why not? Like,
Yeah. It's what I do all day, but with more people around me.
Is there anything about doing that in a public meeting that is a concern for that owner
hmm.
as a recorded meeting?
It's all publicly available. I mean, if someone, you know, they may not have access to log into our near map, but if they FOIA'd the pictures, I'd have to ask whether or not that's public record. Cause if it is, there's really nothing that's being disclosed that isn't immediately available to the public.
Yeah.
Sounds like something that you could look into between now and then.
Yeah, let me find out.
Just if we pull something up and we're like, well, that's a problem, you know?
Yeah.
If we're recording it,
Yeah, let me find out.
make sure we're going.
But you could put it up without a locational reference
That's true. Yeah, we could talk about it in
or property
more
owner.
generic terms. That's
Yeah.
true.
Or we do the easement monitoring as a special meeting. You could schedule a regular meeting and immediately following it a special meeting. That is not recorded.
We can do that.
Can you do that?
Can you?
Or we can just throw an executive session in and I could go over what executive session is normally allowable for, right? It's normally for information that is not public knowledge. So if it isn't, we just throw in an executive session and then we do it there, and then that should be fine, because in executive session, we turn off the recording.
Yeah, if you wanna find out on the
Yeah.
town side what they feel is best, then. I like that idea of kind of walking through together and we can work on our method a little bit as a group.
Sure,
Sounds good.
sounds good. I will put that together.
Well, thanks for reaching out to them. They certainly, since I've lived here, they've always had this like huge volunteer capacity. And I've always wondered like, how do they pull that off? Because it
A
takes
lot
a
of them are
lot.
UConn students
Is that
and they have dedicated, they had a dedicated staff person. He's not there anymore, Andy. But, you know, it's,
It's sort of as people or sustain.
yeah, and
The
we
way
have
that they're working.
stewards, so each property has a steward, and that's who does the monitoring. So,
Okay,
you know, it is a big, but there are issues with that too, like. People
are they
not
looking for
doing it.
stewards
They always are, yeah.
always?
Mhm.
All right, well, that's a good step forward and that could accelerate. The few that we get done annually.
Yeah.
So Will, you want to get them all done this year? That's your goal?
Every weekend.
You wanna quit your job and come easement monitor for me?
I would love to, that'd be so.
Oh,
cool. I'm like, I'll do that.
I did that for Department of Ag and a farmland trust.
Yeah, I
I
think
was
that'd be,
doing
I've gone out
monitoring
a few times.
baselines.
their easement person, NRCS.
Yeah, it's fun.
Those are the days.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So we did get out, right? This is that
Yep.
twenty
We
eleven
did get
report.
out.
Yep.
We did get out to the, what, 73?
78 Meadow,
70 something?
Meadowbrook Apartments.
Yeah.
Down southern town. How'd it look?
It's a big sort
Dirty.
of floodplain on a river, on
Yep.
the Conneville Brook.
Mhm.
Looked good. One thing I wanted to follow up to you, Mike, and I forgot to email you is, we have a couple of different placard signs for marking the boundary. The set that we had, I think they all said, they either said like, town property boundary, or it said Mansfield easement area, no public access. And the language on all the signs that I have, I'll bring them in. It didn't quite seem appropriate for this site because there is a trail going down into there.
Right.
And so I think that's something we should figure out with you before we go on site is public access allowed and like which sign is the right placard to hang up?
I believe this is a public access easement, but
Yeah.
I have a lot of those placards. And the property owner, did reach out to me and said if they found any problems, just give me a call and let me know and we'll take care of it. So I will double check in the easement language about access. And then if we need to change to the standard blue conservation easement ones, I'll let them know and see if.
I'll bring the ones I have in and maybe some are out of date too. I'm not sure. So
Yeah.
I'll come back someday. Bring it all in and figure it out. Do you have the survey, just a summary of,
I need to add like a quick like I put it in the survey 1, 2, 3, and actually I was gonna mention that I have a new, I did update the
James.
survey. I have a new one now.
Hey,
It's
sorry I'm
not-
late.
Okay, it's not that different. It just accommodates multiple picture, like as many pictures as you want.
Good.
Whereas before it was just a couple, and so that's really the only difference. But there is a map available on our GIS online if people want to look, and you have to I had to get the new login from Derek because he did update it at some point. So whatever I had given.
That's
you-
why I couldn't log in.
Yeah. but
Derek's fault.
it is. So whatever I had given you as the original password, it has changed. So if you do go out, just make sure you
Okay.
get it from me. It's like totally random. Not
So-
random, but it's not something I could remember.
so in there, the photos are in there that
The
you
photos
took,
are in
and the
there
surveys
in the
there?
survey, and
Okay.
it's kind of nice because you can, the parcels are outdated now because I had gotten the shape file from Derek when I first started doing the monitoring, which was years ago. So like the easement list might have changed, but I did pull that in. So you can see all the easements in town, and then each easement has a dot for the ones that we monitor. You
Okay.
see, it's just kind of nice to see like,
Yeah.
oh, and then when you click on the dot, it'll tell you like what we collected
Okay.
at that location.
Sorry, James, we're talking about the February 11th easement monitoring trip that we did. Yeah, so the site was, there's a lot of invasives there and the sort of, it's a pretty steep bank coming in from the parking lots. In some places, there's a little bit of trash, and then over near the dumpsters by the next property, there is quite a lot of trash kind of on the edge of the easement, so hard to tell because of the boundary issues exactly what's inside the easement and what's not, but I think we had a general recommendation of like they could do some cleaning up along that parking lot edge into the woods there.
Okay, I will let them know.
There's also, go ahead, sorry.
There's also a disc golf thing. And mulch
There's a picture if you want to see.
and,
Yeah.
and a mulch trail down to it's only
The
one
disc on it.
course,
Right.
one hole.
In a
um,
frisbee, an actual meadow.
And a
garden
Meadow
frisbee.
Brook disc. We were not sure though, because of boundary issues, if that was on or off the easement. It's
check.
probably right on the line.
Yeah.
I will check.
So, yes, public access, but a built structure.
Probably not disc golf.
Or
Yeah,
or mulching. within
Yeah.
it to maintain
those are
it.
generally not allowed.
So those were noted and there's pictures. There was just uncertainty about the boundary.
I will check.
So if we do the aerial, we can be looking for foreign structures.
Or maintain trails. like
Yeah.
They had to clear some vegetation to establish said trail,
Right.
then they mulched it.
Mike, or Michael, there's also, I think this is just sort of an easement language thing, or maybe I'm just misunderstanding. Like, I think in the easement language, there is a comment about no stormwater infrastructure or discharge in the easement area. But they did build a detention basin that outflows into the easement area. And so maybe they just use some boilerplate language in the easement that doesn't quite match.
We
what
just
was-
didn't
how
catch
was
it back in
built.
the day.
Yeah, so I just think as our easements go forward, I don't think there's any real major issues there, but there's just sort of a consistency or a kind of a contradiction.
Yeah, that is a good.
And I just
point.
kind of skimmed the language, so I might have misinterpreted that, but I think one of us was reading it out there and that was. a
The
little-
language mentioned the sewer or water treatment line, which would preceded.
Down in the
easement,
floodplain,
Which is in
yeah.
the floodplain. But we were uncertain about that stormwater retention.
Yeah,
That seemed newer construction.
I would have to, and then of course, there's often in these languages, it's you're not allowed to do any of these things unless you get permission. And I would have to see if, I'd have to go back and read the record to see if at the time that it was built and they gave the easement,
Right,
that they're like,
yeah.
except for this, right? And everyone said, yeah, sure, except for
Right,
that, that's great.
right.
So that happens.
It's not something you would sneak in after. the-
No, generally,
It's major infrastructure for the
Right.
whole property, so.
yeah, I will look into that.
And what was the box with looked like a grater with? the
Oh, what,
holes? Like a flow.
dispersion, a flow dispersion
I have a
chamber,
picture of that too.
the FDC 5,000. But it
I'm like,
wasn't,
wow, how did you?
on the plans, it was an FDC, I think they called it as an FD, or flood, yeah, maybe not, maybe I think.
I think we lost our online members.
They're like, whoa,
Oh, good.
they're alive.
And there's a huge, this is not relevant, but there's a very large old concrete dam just downstream of the easement, which is like a complete disaster for the river and stuff, so that was,
Yeah,
I
sure.
never realized that was even there, so that was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think most of those dams is when the deep wants to breach them. But I don't know.
Been breached through storm damage, yeah, it's a
Great.
jumble of, yeah.
Reached and broke.
Yeah, it is.
It's in multiple
It's been
pieces.
undermined and fallen apart, so.
You know, that's really interesting, just in the case of something that I want to talk about later is sustainable CT actions. And hypothetically, things about floodplain and water course and things such cleanup is removing rubble from a feeder stream of a major water course.
So these are huge chunks of rubble.
Ah,
Yeah, these are,
Like-
yeah, you need to get an
excavator to get them in there.
Yeah, and a truck. Yeah. And lots of chainsaws, and anyway.
So Aaron, you'll finalize that report or the record or whatever within survey 123.
I'll read it and follow up with the property owner about all of the various questions and if
Yeah,
there's
no.
disc golf in the easement, get them to stop playing disc golf in the easement.
It might be hard. It looked like it's been used.
I mean, is it a bad thing, I guess?
That's slippery slope about, because we've monitored other easements where, you know, it depends on the letter of the easement,
Right,
right? And so if built structures are not allowed within the easement, they're not allowed within the easement, even if it's, I mean, what's the difference between a disc golf station versus an ATV trail? They're both recreation.
Well, impact wise, there's a big difference.
The drainage.
But it's not, we're not in the position to make determinations and sort of, yeah. That's- we just-
That's that guy.
That, yeah, kind of. That is kind of me. And then
we collect the data and then we let other people make. the
Deal with
data.
it.
and then I send the letter and they appeal me to the PZC and the PZC says, what does wetlands think? And then I'm back to you. And not wetlands, what does conservation
Is that
think?
progress?
Yeah, some dots.
There's some dots. Okay. Got some dots on the map. We've actually done some stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Done some stuff.
Which dots are we looking at?
The dots are where we've gone
The red
and the
dots.
black.
Okay.
Yes, the black
That's
parcels.
getting it done.
Yes.
All right.
So to that, we've got some remote monitoring to trial out at our next meeting. We could try to get out for another monitoring visit before that March 20th. If folks are interested, do another visit before everything buds and leaves out. I'd be interested. This weekend is jam-packed for me anyway. I don't know if anybody's interested to do something the weekend of the 10th, 11th, or the 17th, 18th as a similar kind of couple-hour visit, monitoring visit.
I can do either of those.
That's the beginning. Those are the bookends of Yukon spring break. But
That means
know-
you should have more time, right?
I'm going to a conference at the end. So I can't do the 17th, 16th, 17th, but I could possibly do the 9th, 10th.
I can set something up. Figure out an easement that looks ripe for being monitored.
The most egregious you can. Just kidding.
No,
Um,
they shouldn't be egregious at all. If they're the
Well, you know
most
what?
egregious you can find, yes.
I think there might have been other easements on other properties contiguous to the one we did.
There were, I was really struggling with figuring out what the easements were.
Okay.
So that was the reason is
You're
there,
like, what about these? other
Yeah, we could,
ones?
if they're all contiguous, we can just go out and.
yeah, look
do
at all
3
of
or 4 at a
those.
time.
Yeah, the real issue was those parcels are a lot less neat on the assessor's maps of ownership. And I was having trouble as a result figuring out what the actual easements were. And just going into the land records and reading is not a way to find what easements apply to what. So I can make another effort at those because I originally I was gonna be like, just send you out to look at the whole system because that would be much more efficient, but I could not for the life of me figure
It
out.
looks like that
which it
one
was.
triangle. Like,
Yep.
what-
No, it's not a good, the layers are,
They're old easements, it sounds like.
they're old easements, because Meadowbrook is, I think, more recent than those other ones near there.
I get you.
So I will look again.
Okay, but anything in that similar size or a couple of different easements of a similar size like that, we could probably
Will do.
take care of that. The preference for a Saturday or a Sunday?
What is that? I don't, it doesn't matter to me.
I don't have a,
Actually, I can't do the
Is that
two.
Freedom Green?
I don't know where
Okay.
that, it's close to that one you gave us, so.
I don't have a
That's like-
preference at this point, but at
awful.
some point the weekend of the 16th,
Yeah, it does.
I'll have it's not yet landed on the calendar, but I'll have some unavailability.
Okay, the morning of Saturday the 9th, I can't do that. So we can do something later in the afternoon on the 9th or that other weekend.
I can do either of those.
If people aren't protesting afternoon on the 9th, I can just schedule for afternoon on the 9th.
I probably couldn't do. I think I have a midday 12 to 2 thing. I mean, the 16th, I'm not leaving until the 17th for the conference. I could do the 16th.
Do you want me to set up a when to meet?
That sounds better.
I'll set up the when to
Did you say
meet.
the 16th is not good?
No, I said it was good.
It was good? Okay, that would work.
Or you just do the 16th.
Chad?
Or not.
Or you're not sure about the 16th.
Well, if Will can make the 16th and you two can make the
So you
16th,
don't need to.
you're good to go. I'll join if I can. It's gymnastics state meet that weekend.
Well, that's pretty important.
What events are you doing, Chad?
I'm doing the cheering dad.
I know.
That's a good one.
Gold medal.
Not in my daughter's estimation.
Yeah, I like the 16th because I think likely if we're gonna try to do something Yukon break related, it's gonna be the first weekend. So as a family, sorry.
Didn't make
Not with
sense.
us.
Yeah, not with you guys.
You can do something together, I guess. That's fine.
Point taken. Um,
We're having a kegger. You're all welcome.
I'm gonna put in my calendar, 10 to 1. Just kind of for the morning slot.
I'll put it in mine just in case.
Sure.
Okay, let's keep on going. We're good on monitoring. 4B, the violation at 1725 Storrs Road, that's standard.
Yep, just to, just brief update, 'cause we talked about it a lot last time. Things are as much as they can be, given all the rain and snow this year. They are mostly stable in the area. I was out there last Thursday. The coconut matting that they wanted to put down on the flat areas as another way to kind of hold, the ground without channelizing the streams too much, which we also don't want to do. That got there amidst the 9 inches of snow we were getting. So that is probably going down tomorrow now that all the snow is off the ground. So that'll go down and that'll hold the ground for the following month or so, as we get those March rains, until we can get some planting in there and get that vegetation in. The folks over at the engineering firm are, in general, they are in agreement with the idea that we can probably increase the plantings by 1.5 to 1.75 times for forest density, and we can add some other tree species. If there are any recommendations for increasing species diversity, they are more than happy to hear specific species that we want planted. Otherwise, they're just going to kind of go down the list of general recommendations from NRCS to add more diversity. Yeah, I'm just going to run the increased densities past our reviewer, who I am trying to build a record of when we ask for things, what is supported by data, because it seems like there is a great deal of discussion in my unthorough search of the literature on when you are reforesting, how much initial planting do you need versus for density versus how much natural revegetation can you expect versus the rates of die-off.
It's all over the
It's a
place.
big.
It really depends on your objective, so.
Yeah.
So.
So they're within NRCS recommendation standards, but they're more than happy to increase species diversity, and I think that's a big win. So we're gonna iron that out over the next month, and when the time they get planting, we'll get it restored.
So presumably this means that it's being reforested, not landscape.
Yes, the point is it's a forest restoration plan.
Okay.
So are they submitting a revised restoration plan? to the
So,
town?
they're going to, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask them to give me the revised plan because they will add their new planting schedule. And when they do that, I'll bring it to you, as well as I'm going to present it to the IWA and say that, you know, they believe this is still in the spirit of the original plan. They just want to increase diversity and add some more plantings. You'll have a chance, if you want to add comments, to send to IWA to add comments about forest plantings going forward. Going forward, what we want to do, we've learned a lot about forest restoration plans as a result of this incident. So we have kind of a better idea of what we're looking for and what to ask for. One of the interesting quirks that you brought up, Michael, it's very weird to have two people in the same,
Try.
One of the things that was brought up is, as our regulations are written right now, we refer applications to you. We don't refer restoration plans for wetlands to you. That's an oversight. If we're going to go so far as to have a restoration plan for forest or wetlands, it really makes perfect sense to give it to the Conservation Commission to weigh in on.
Like,
So go-
that's more in like my expertise, more than looking at plans where I'm like, I'm not an engineer, like, I mean,
So
so.
going
that would be
forward,
Great.
right, going forward, we're gonna be doing that. in any future ones. Ideally, we would not need to, but we're going to. So, any ones that come forward, Conservation Commission is gonna get those. And then the other thing that we wanted to note is that in the future, I believe it's next year, we are going to be recertifying our on-call consultants who allow us to get good plan reviews in a rapid manner whenever we get a big application in.
Our third party, right?
Our third-party
Land
reviewers, yes. So we, like every 3 or 4 years, we recertify that list of people such that we can have rapid response, and we don't have to do a full RFP. And what we want to do is, we would like to have a member of the Conservation Commission sit on the board that is normally people from IWA and PZC only for recertifying, and that way we can have someone who is coming at it mostly from an ecological standard, in addition to all the questions that PZC and IWA have, for their expertises and things you'd like to see that their various firms can provide.
Mhm.
So we'd like to bring you in on that, going forward. We think that's just a way to add more, robustness to the review process.
Yeah, that's a great, I like all those ideas.
So that's my update. If you have any questions, you can ask them now or just send them to my email.
I have a
Any
question for you.
questions?
I do,
Yeah.
I have a question for you. I remember, and I think it was the last meeting or the meeting before that, when John Salander brought up that he wasn't happy. He thought there was a sort of a weakness in the last reviewer
Mhm.
project in terms of capability. So I don't know if that's true or not, but how do we vet for that? And let's say, like I work a lot on an on-call basis, right? So that I could be one firm with a couple of others and it can rotate either, in order, or it can be to my particular strength or skill set, within what I do. So does that happen when you go to a list of pre-approved firms?
So my experience with who we get when we send out the application and why we pick them is limited to the fact that I've been here 1 year and I've gone through this process once. We got 2 quotes that were almost the exact same price. One person beat somebody by like $500 total. And they hadn't done something recently and Land Tech had, so the commission went with Land Tech because they were used to these reviewers. It is hard to really gauge as non-experts the expertise of experts unless there is something glaring that is obviously not correct. In terms of catching this error, if we just want to go to that, Land Tech is not actively monitoring this site. Land Tech is the plan reviewer.
No, I
Right, so like we, Bowler Engineering, who designed it, they're on notice of you can't miss any of these ever again, or we're not really going to trust you. But that's kind of the point of the interviews at the start, is like, who do you have on staff that does ecological evaluation? Who do you have on staff that
Right.
does these? What are your
I was
credentials?
asking really, is there someone in every slot?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on what we ask for, right? We definitely have stormwater experts, we have wetland scientists, we have soil scientists, but do all these firms have an ecologist on staff? Probably not. Some of them do, some of them don't. And if we want firms that have an ecologist on staff, or there are various other positions that may be staff versus subcontracted, that's something we could look for.
We've had Land Tech review things for a couple years, maybe even since before COVID. And I know them from my other work, and I mean, my sense is that they have experienced engineers on stormwater and construction, in our purview anyway, in terms of stormwater, and also the wetland gentleman there is many decades of experience, both kind of on delineating, enforcement, and sort of on restoration
Yeah.
planting. And so another thing that I would say is, sometimes what we want as like the ideal in terms of like what John was saying about restoration, is a little different than what the regulations require, or what the performance standards are that they have to meet. So Land Tech might say this restoration plan is adequate, meaning it complies with the regulations. But that might be really far from where John or any of us would like to actually see the
Yeah,
place
no, I
restored to,
understand.
right? So like, there's that sort of
Yeah.
regulatory gap that happens a lot of times. So just
Fortunately,
I've been happy with land tech so far.
And it was a comment, it was not directed to Land Tech, but just what
Okay.
is our process? And in terms of firm depth, when we pick.
Yeah.
Sounds like an opportunity to learn more about that.
Yes.
given
I
what
believe
you
that's,
said.
yes, I believe that is 2025. So amid all of the flurry of getting the POCD done, we will also be recertifying all of these people. So it is like a multiple hour, most of a day commitment to do this because we sit down and go through a lot with these firms. But we'd love to have someone from the board who, if anybody can find the time, I know you're all very busy people, but
I think, yeah, we'll definitely find people to have the time and be
Yeah.
part of that. Appreciate the invite.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of longer timelines, does the moratorium have a rough timeline of when it might be reinstated?
Absolutely, I can
ended
update you
sometime.
on that. So the moratorium was recently extended for 6 months. So the moratorium was gonna be done in March, they extended it till August. We, yesterday afternoon at the Reg Review Committee, the Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed the first draft of the new multifamily housing regs that our reviewer Tyke has put together. Without going too much into these, the general plan is to present these at the upcoming meeting to the public. And begin getting feedback from everyone on the commission such that we can begin with this. The general idea of this is to move away from allowing multifamily in zones in general and allowing multifamily as of right in a development district zone. What that means is that rather than saying, right now, our town is divided into about 20 different zones, which is a high number for towns of this size. It gives us a lot of granularity, but we have a lot of uses in each zone. Multifamily housing is in a lot of zones, including rural residential, which is over about 90% of our land area. It's allowed by special permit. When it comes to zoning regulatory authority, if something is allowed by special permit, the board has deemed that it is appropriate in that zone as long as you can meet certain standards. So if you get a developer that comes in and meets all of these standards and you deny them for no real reason, they're gonna appeal and say, we met all of your standards and you denied us, that's acting capriciously. The judge will say, yeah, it does certainly seem like that, and then they're gonna return to us and we're gonna have to find a real reason to deny them, or they're gonna get their project approved. That is because the use is landed in the zone. What we are saying is we're gonna remove multifamily from most zones and instead add a new zone, the multifamily design district, where you come in and apply to put the zone somewhere because this zone is suitable for the overall development plans for the town, the pattern of development that is proposed in the Plan of Conservation and Development and adopted by the town. Having multifamily is consistent with that, so we should have it here. And then the discussion is about, should we allow it in this spot at all, right? Is it suitable in this spot based on surrounding densities and utilities and all these things? There's guidelines for architecture, for anything in there. This is good for us because it gives us granularity and control. It's also good for the developer insofar as it will stop them earlier in the process, so they're not gonna waste money and time. If they can't land the zone, landing the zone is mostly conceptual drawings. You don't have to go through all the stormwater. You don't have to go through all of these things. It becomes a question of, does the town seem amenable to this? Yes or no? If yes, at what densities and what are you looking for and what amenities? We'll design around that. If we can make it work for our rough economics, we can move forward. Then, if they land the zone, the only thing they still have to go through wetlands. So they still have to meet all of our environmental standards, but instead of being a special permit process, which has its own public hearing is, can you land the zone? It just becomes a site plan approval, which is a much faster approval of, you've done everything you said you would do in landing the zone, therefore go forth and build. So it kind of shuffles where zoning gets involved to the front to put all of the concerns of, should we even have it here first? But then you still have to meet all the same rigor of, is this going to be workable ecologically? and for stormwater. So that's kind of that is the proposed design. We're gonna bring that to the commission on Monday, see how they think. They'll refer it out to their relevant boards, including you, to see how do you think this affects the wetlands process? Do you have concerns? You'll have the opportunity to comment, and then we'll go from there. That's kind of what we're thinking for the moratorium. We got about 6 months to make this work, and then the new regulations will go into effect in August.
So that's something we might look at our March meeting, you think? or-
It depends. If it goes, if the general consensus of the board is this needs a little more work, I would expect to see it in April, just because they'll send it back to Tyke. We in the office will work with them on wordsmithing and design work. We'll
Okay.
send it back to the board and they'll send it to you in April.
Great.
Yep.
Any other questions on that? Any other questions on the standard 1725 Stores Road, the violation, the restoration plan, all that stuff?
So you said that we'd be able to review will that be next month or?
I
would
think
that be too
so.
late?
I think so, next month, because I'm gonna wanna get them to make these edits before planting season. So we'll have them do it in March, but they don't anticipate that they would put a shovel in the ground in that area until April, because they want it to, be less soggy, and if, Lord knows, we need more time to dry out.
I'm really interested in this opportunity to review, and so I guess if it requires a special meeting on our part.
Mhm.
Or I wonder if could the plans be, let's say we can't make a special meeting, but they need to turn it around, or they need to IWA to approve it to get those shovels in the ground. Could it be sent to us by email and we review and provide you direct comments? Is
Yeah.
that,
No, that's doable.
that's.
I can do that. That's not, it's not a meeting, right?
Right. And it's not a discussion among us, it's just we review and then would directly provide to you any comments we might have on the plan.
That's probably fine. I will
Okay.
reassert that with my attorney, but that's probably fine.
I'd prefer the regular meeting discussion. I learned
Yeah.
a lot with those, but if the timelines don't allow that, I'm just
Mhm.
trying to think of other ways we still get to review.
Absolutely.
That's great. And only other thing I'd say is, if we could broaden that opportunity where anything that's gonna go to IWA for review as related to a permit or a project, if our commission could also get the opportunity to review similar to these restoration plans. I don't think there's that many things, but if we're part of the review process on a permit application, it seems logical that we would be part of a review process on anything that's related that might come after that,
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what things other than permits and violations go to them, other than regulatory revisions. But if there is anything,
Like if there's
I
a
will-
revised stormwater report or if, I know the standard had to do some different, test pits or changes to their stormwater.
yeah,
So
I can
we
send
kinda
those
hear
things.
about
I
that
can send
anecdotally, but
the documents along to you, especially the ones that normally just come into my office for, there's a lot of stuff after an approval just goes to my office, and if I have any questions about it, I send it to them,
Not
but
necessarily goes.
But I can forward it, but I can,
That's-
the IWA is always allowed to have it. I often forward it to them in a memo. I can just forward it to you. There's really nothing wrong with that. It's like 3 more clicks of my computer too. It doesn't make any more work, so I can do that for you.
Okay, and we'll have a conversation next week about the inability to discuss things by email. So if you send us something, we can respond to you, but that's as far as it goes. We cannot have reply all discussions by email.
It becomes an unnoticed meeting. It is
Yeah.
the great bane of,
Every group.
many things is I would argue unintended consequence of the Freedom of Information Act is that your commission just can't email and discuss things. Yeah, so it's not great, but yeah.
No, it's like that.
It
Okay.
is what it is.
Okay, new business, 5A, Sustainable Connecticut, CT 2025 Gold Certification.
Yeah, so this is a brief update to you guys that we have gotten Sustainable CT Silver certifications in the past. Sustainable CT has created a higher certification. Mansfield, as an overachieving child town, wants to reach the higher certification level. We're not up until next year that we have to submit everything by October, but Ginny, who's our recycling coordinator, is already honing in on this. So particularly in this body, Section 3 of Sustainable CT, which is all about conservation of land and water resources, is one of those things that we can do a lot with. And we have some time where we could organize volunteer projects and suggest revisions to regulations related to dark skies and water management and all these things that could gain us points towards this and are also just good things for the community to be doing. So if you have some time, this is not a task for you all, and I don't have anything here today, but if you have time to go out to Sustainable CT and look at some of the tasks, particularly in Section 3, and think about, there was a project I was intending to do, or there was something I was interested in, the town may be able to mobilize some resources, put that forward, and we can use this as the impetus to make stuff happen.
That would be the criteria for gold certification under Section 3.
Yes, so basically gold certification is just another tier of points that we need to accumulate. We have a bunch of things that we've already done that we just need to update, as well as there are things where you earn new points for new tasks. I will get the full breakdown of what we've already done to you next week. I don't, because I was not on staff the last time we had Sustainable CT, I don't have our full breakdown list. I was still getting set up with that, so I didn't have it for you today.
Okay.
But yeah, for March, you will have our, here's what we've done, here's what's still available. And you can look at what are some projects that we might be able to do to get some points, get a better certification, and
Is there a
So-
platinum level?
not yet. They just made the gold level. So this is the first year, gold levels available. So there's bronze and silver.
That's what you-
I don't know, if we keep overachieving, they may make a platinum level.
New Haven is the only gold certified dot on the map right now.
That's
Not
what?
for long, not for long.
That's completely unacceptable. I mean,
It is, totally.
New Haven, no, that's not allowed.
Totally.
So, yeah, anyway, that's coming, so I will provide you with more about that in the future, and if you've got ideas about what we could do, I'd love to hear them. The staff update, the wetlands regs, so I don't know if I ever really communicated this to you all. We put in place the 50-foot riparian buffer, that is in place now.
Describe that?
Yes, so back a couple months ago, I noted to the board, one of my earliest initiatives here was making a riparian buffer happen in this town. A specific setback that you are not supposed to interfere with. We went back and forth on how to make this buffer happen, because the more we thought about the regs, the weirder it got to put it in zoning. Because if you create an overlay district in zoning that says this is the wetlands overlay, or this is the riparian corridor buffer overlay, this is on the map, it's 50 feet wide around streams, don't touch them, you can't do anything in them. It becomes a zoning reg, which is a problem if you are leaving yourself open for variances by creating undue penalty on property owners, particularly in areas where we've already built, right? We have a lot of structures within the 50-foot buffer of existing watercourses. If you make it impossible to do work on those structures and do reasonable improvements, like I want to put in a new compressor for an air conditioner in my house, it's 48 feet from a wetland, I'm not allowed to do that. Then you go to the ZBA and you say, I would like this. The ZBA will say, that's completely unreasonable, approved. And if you are granting variances on too many things, it starts to become a, why are we doing this via zoning anyway? So what we ultimately settled on, and we adopted this wetlands regulation back in November, is that we have modified our list of significant impacts to include removal of natural vegetation within 50 feet of a wetlands or watercourse, such that if you are, and we tailored it this way about natural vegetation, is if you are cutting down existing forest or marshland, then that would be a significant impact. In order to get a significant impact approved as part of your project, you need to prove there isn't a prudent and feasible alternative to this. But natural vegetation doesn't include lawns, natural vegetation doesn't include your existing house. So you, as a residential property owner, can continue to maintain your property without needing to worry about this regulation, but we have put a pretty effective no-build zone around wetlands and watercourses of 50 feet if they are surrounded by natural vegetation already.
So do you have language that we can pull up and read?
Yep.
I'm just because it
So-
doesn't sound like. Maybe I'm not hearing it. It doesn't sound like a setback. It just sounds, it sounds like. Some clarifying language that 50 feet from a resource. It's. We can call it a significant impact, but it doesn't prohibit activity.
Well, see, that's the thing. If something is a significant impact, so actually, let me just pull up the wetlands regulations. Just get these this way. Maybe they're on E-code already. No,
Can Will and James see what you're doing right now?
not yet.
Okay.
Okay, so E-code hasn't put our wetlands regs out there with these updates on them. But what I will do is I'm gonna pull up the statute for that's what, chapter 440 of this CGS. So I'm just gonna pull up what a significant impact is, because a significant impact has really specific language of what it actually means. Significant impact in general, layman's speech is this, this means this is a bad impact, it's significant. But let me just share my screen here, because you're right, I can't see. So prudent and feasible. So significant impacts explicitly require an applicant to demonstrate that there is no alternative to what you are doing that is both prudent and feasible. And those are defined in statute as able to be constructed or implemented consistent with sound engineering principles and economically or otherwise reasonable in light of the social benefits to be derived from the activity. And this is actually a really high standard, which is why no one ever wants us to determine something is a significant impact. If I say that your activity in a wetland is a significant impact, you have to demonstrate to the Wetlands Commission that there is no other way you can design your property that will not do whatever you are doing, and because of engineering or because it is astronomically prohibitively expensive. A mere finding of this will cost more is not enough. Feasibility, actually prudence has been found to include, you may not be able to do what you want on this site. It is
Yeah,
imprudent to use this site.
So we're allowed to tell a developer, you need to cut 3,000 square feet of retail or rental space?
You can tell them,
Because I feel like that's been a hard thing to push in a lot, like the
Functional-
standards specifically. We were not able to move them back from being 10 feet from that wetland because there was no way to do that.
now, well, I mean, with the standard, I would note, that was a very developed site. But in terms of this, what this means is, yeah, you can tell them you are impacting this. You are destroying natural vegetation within 50 feet. That's significant. Pull it back because you have not demonstrated to us that you can't do this and make your project work. You have not demonstrated to us that you have to, because of this, you have to change your driveway location and build a bridge and it's going to cost you, another $250,000. You haven't demonstrated that for, a small project, right? There are levels of reasonableness, but it's pretty easy to say with this regulation, yeah, you're doing too much. That's significant. And you haven't really proven to us that this is both prudent and feasible, that there's no other way you can do this for this scope. And the hard thing is holding people to this. The actual truth of regulations if I will wax poetic for 1 minute on this. The truth of regulations is regulations only work as well as the people willing to stand behind them and fight. And no matter how strong we make the zoning regs to say you will not touch anything in here, zoning is built with a release valve of, but the ZBA can just say you can. The wetlands regs, at least, allow us to say we're not convinced. We don't think you should do this. You haven't proven it to us, and we're not gonna let you. And as long as you have people who are willing to stand behind the wetlands regs and say that because they're not convinced, they're pretty strong.
And it's applicable to all zone, right? It's across the town, right? So
Everywhere.
It's not.
Not one, yep, every watercourse, every wetland.
Is there language or it has?
There is language, it's not on the town board yet. 1 second. Let me go back to the wetlands meeting in November when they were adopted. I'll just pull that up for a second. I think it was here. Was this the longest meeting we've ever done? No, that was November. September. Thank you for holding.
Do you want to email it, Mike? I don't.
I
wanna-
can email it to
Yeah,
you,
just
yes.
If you want some time
I
to
will-
find.
yeah,
it.
let me find it rather than just silently messing with this.
So it'd be, I think we'd all be really interested in just kind of seeing what the language is.
Absolutely, I will happily do that. Where did my, there it is.
Can
Um,
we recap quickly for the notes?
Yes.
So, this 50-foot buffer of natural vegetation. It's now like officially in the wetland regs.
Mhm.
Via an update to the list of significant impacts.
Yes.
So that list now includes removal of vegetation within 50 feet of wetlands and watercourses.
Yes,
Okay, is that sufficiently captured?
yeah, that
Okay.
that sufficiently captures. I'll send you the new language.
Good work, Jeff.
I'll send you the new language. It should be online soon.
And it doesn't mean removal of all vegetation, it means any vegetation.
I said, we wrote it as natural
Yeah.
vegetation, such that you remove part of your lawn, we're not gonna come after you with pitchforks. You take down a bunch of screening trees, yeah, we're gonna stop you. The wetlands regs in the state do have a carve out of, yes, you can take down 1 tree, right? Like, you don't have to get a wetlands permit to take down a tree in the wetland if it's dead. But we ask that you tell us first. And if you are doing any clearing, if you are removing a patch of natural vegetation within 50 feet, we're gonna stop you. We're gonna say that's a violation of the wetlands regs.
I really like that because it's such an analog to what I do, where my entire life is ruled by prudent and feasible and significant impacts related to archaeological sites. And most of our archaeological sites are near wetlands or water, so there's a lot of overlap. But I see it, the standard applied all the time, and it's a pretty high bar. You can't just say it's too expensive.
Right.
You really have to prove it, and you have to prove it as something that you absolutely need to have the project happen within a reasonable framework. You can't, for example, just say, well, I can't make this work. I
Right,
don't have this much because I won't then get everything I want.
right.
Because that's a want, not a need. There's a big difference between a want and a need. Like if someone says, I don't wanna, this can't survive unless we have a giant parking lot instead of garage. That's a want, not a need, really, too.
Right.
So I think but you're right, though, it takes some metal to be able to say, no.
Is this retroactive? I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I just was gonna say, I feel like we've brought this up in meetings before where we're sort of looking at the wetland boundary and where, the development's right up to the edge and,
Yeah, yeah.
it'll be nice to.
to have, that's something more solid, yeah.
Yeah, or if there are impacts due to adjacent construction that they would also have, there's some sort of obligation to replant that 50-foot area.
Yeah, I mean, for all ongoing activities, you do have to restore, we do have restoration requirements, for example, at the standard, even beyond the you know, the area that is extensively disturbed. There are places around the standard, because I walk that every 2 weeks at a minimum. Except that one time after Thanksgiving, where, you know, there is dirt that has undermined silt fence, and it's like, okay, well, you know, you gotta go get that. You're gonna fix that, you're gonna throw down conservation seed mix where you took it out, and it's gonna be restored. They do have obligations to do that, and I have the power to enforce that.
Yeah, I think this is huge. Most other states that I've done work in have some sort of setback or sort of protected area adjacent to the resource. And most research, even though that buffer width is sort of argued, or there's a lot of different versions, everybody is saying that some protective buffer area of natural vegetation should be preserved against, you know, water resources. So,
Hello. Yeah, you know, it's part of it is hard because, as Meg said before, humans and our entire civilization kind of live along water boundaries. So if you make it too hard to build near water, that is itself a problem. But if you're being responsible with your patterns of development, you can't overdevelop near your water resources either.
Yeah.
I think it's a big positive shift in
It
our
is.
regs. So
It is.
it's a great update.
You'll be happy to know that we got out ahead of this because a state bill just went to committee advising the Department of Environmental Protection that they should work into, they should look into making these corridors, and we already did it. So we beat the state to the punch. I don't expect that to make it out of committee. Honestly, I'm a pessimistic person, but
It's nuts that we have that we don't have any protection after the wetland. There's no kind of gradation or protection on that buffer area. It's just, there's jurisdiction, but there's really no protection.
it's a Connecticut kind of exclusive thing among the
Yeah.
New England states and New York, which is like really weird. But
So how's natural vegetation defined?
natural vegetation is defined as, that's a great question. We don't have it defined in our regs, which means we default to the state statute definitions. And I believe natural vegetation is defined in the state statute definition, so I just gotta pull it out.
I would think it's sort of a non-managed, non-landscaped
Well, it's just what's there now.
vegetative cover.
Yeah. Yeah.
So invasives don't count as natural. Does Pachysandra count as
Yeah, I
natural?
thought about that.
No,
I
I
think-
think invasives do count as
Yeah.
natural.
They're natural, but they're non,
Because you're not.
Because non-natural,
Landscape.
non-natural is sort of anthropogenic, you know, landscaped. Yeah, so turf or like,
garden bed.
yeah, something like that.
Okay.
Even though invasives are,
We want
Not
you to, we
designed.
want you to take them out. We just want you to ask first so we can make sure we understand.
Here we go.
So that's the update. Well, one other thing is someone said, is this retroactive? And the answer is no, no regulatory changes are ever retroactive. But it does apply to everything going forward. And the application that was rejected at the tree farm, if they come back, they are, you know,
Yeah.
susceptible to this.
I guess, but I guess, yeah, not retroactive. I was gonna ask, is it kind of, like if you observe somebody who's just taken down a quarter acre of trees and you can tell it's along a
Mhm.
stream or a wetland, that is also enforceable.
Yeah, it's
right?
enforceable.
As a drive-by.
It's 100% enforceable as a driveway. Yep.
Any other questions about that or comments?
The list of natural vegetation is defined, you said, in state statute.
I believe it's in state statute of the very large list of things that starts chapter 1.1. Or it's in the list of,
I'm just gonna put it in
Wetlands.
state statute.
I believe it's in state statute. That's correct.
Okay, new business. No, we did that. Other, you have under here, we already talked about that. So item 6, any reports from members? I have a very short report, which is I led a walk this weekend for one person. So I'm gonna talk to some of the parks folks and maybe they need to do just a little more outreach or something about getting the word out on walks and things like that. Have you been doing walks recently? Has
Not
anybody else
recently, I
been?
have one coming up in May.
Okay, I would just see if they're getting the word out.
So there is a new parks coordinator.
Travis?
We at about the same time I started as the kind of outdoor planning guy who is also kind of in parks. There was a person who started who was on for 6 months and then quit, and then Travis got hired. So Travis is coming up to speed with all of the outdoor stuff. He's mostly got a background in aquatics, but he and I are working very closely on getting new life breathed into some of these programs like community gardens, which has been faltering since COVID and more like that. So we'd love to get more advertising out for these programs.
Okay. Yeah, he sent an email about interest in doing summer
Oh, yes.
programs. So
What was your walk on?
I thought it was gonna be about beavers, but they published just like 3 to 4 mile walk at Schoolhouse Brook. So that's what she wanted to see as much of the park as possible with their dog. So that's what we did. So I was ready to talk about beavers, but we just did like a 4 mile hike, which was a great day. It was a great day to be out there. So yeah, if anybody's interested in doing walks this summer, looking at you, Will and James. Just kidding. No, they're fine if you're around. Any other reports? Any other communications? Michael, are there agent approvals or anything like that?
Honestly, it's the slowest it's ever been.
Okay, that's good.
I've been here 1 year now, as of yesterday, and it is the
congratulations.
slowest month. Thank you. They didn't get rid of me. It has been the slowest month that we've had. There is one thing I may have approved since your last meeting, which is at the general store at 534 Stores Road. They are putting in a retaining wall about 50 feet from the wetlands, because there is a natural bank there that is not doing well. So they are putting in a retaining wall. No natural vegetation is being disturbed. It's all lawn.
Mhm.
So
Do you, when you have, say, 3 or 4 approvals or about, do you create a report? Like a summary report?
I put a summary report in my package to the Wetlands Commission,
Okay.
and so I will forward you my summary reports going forward.
Yeah, or you could just, I mean, I think Jennifer used to put them in our packet.
Yeah.
So we can,
Yeah.
yeah.
There is one I can tell you about the one wetlands violation we have, which is only really barely a violation, is somebody started work with it. They need a permit for what they want to do, but they haven't, and they started work, but they hadn't done anything unforgivable, and they've mostly put it back the way it was, and now they're getting an engineer to design it. Somebody wanted to fix a driveway crossing. They have a driveway crossing over a stream. It's over on Coventry Road. They were intending on, they're very worried, given the enormous amount of rain we've had, that their driveway is gonna wash out. So they were intending on adding a couple extra culverts as overflow protection. So I came by, driving by when they were digging to put in new culverts about 15 feet from the stream.
Oh.
So I said, you need a permit for that. So the pipes were already in the ground. They covered the pipes over and put it back. They haven't touched the stream bank yet, so the pipes don't do anything. They're just in the ground. They've rip-wrapped all the sides, stabilized it with wood chips and hay and boulders along the edge so no one falls in. So it's mostly back to being stable. There's just 3 pipes in the ground and part of their driveway now. So in order to do that, I've told them they need to do a analysis on downstream impacts to make sure there's not going to be adverse impacts, and that needs to be done by an engineer, and now they are in the engineering pipeline. So I imagine that application will come before us in a couple months.
Coventry, trying to picture what it is.
Coventry Road.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's been a mess.
It is not all the way paved.
No, there's been a lot of talk, yeah, about fixing it and things, and town council spoke about it on Monday night. It's been a mess. But, yeah, most of it's unpaved,
Yep.
and with all the rain, it's been kind of a mess.
Bad year for rain.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
Like the monsoon.
Yeah. Thank you, Mike. That was a good update. Appreciate that. Any other communications from members? Okay, our next regular meeting is right now for March 20th. And we do have a potential special meeting if we get together on March 16th for easement monitoring. Those are our future meetings. Yeah, I just lost up. That's all I have. Any motion to adjourn?
So moved. 8:20.
Next second. All right, just that. We had a bunch of meetings that we didn't do, everybody, and then we did have a meeting, and after talking with Chad about that, it feels like it would be good to just keep, even if we don't have much on the schedule. So I just want to get your input. I probably should have put this under a thing before adjourning, but it seems like we should still meet, even if it's only for like an hour, just to kind of keep, just keep our momentum, and every, people have things to say, we can have our meetings and not wait 3 or 4 months to
I like that.
do that, so.
Sure.
We will try and do that. If we can't get a quorum together and we don't have enough business, then it's not a big deal, but if we can get a quorum and still check in for an hour, I think that's a good idea, so. Yeah, so we have plenty to do in March, so we'll be back here in March.
Will. Okay.
All right.
Good.
Good evening, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for being here.